consolidation. It's because I pulled out the request from the Hillsville Fire Department. This said it. So, I know that we had a approval from our planning commission, conditioned upon some things. So where we have to do it.
So we have received, the township received the consolidation subdivision plan. It was reviewed by our office. A couple letters were sent with comments. The Mays and their consultant, Mr. Housley, have responded to those comments. And the plan was presented to the Planning Commission at the June 20th meeting. The Planning Commission deliberated the plan for a while. There's still some items that I feel need to be addressed or are in progress of being addressed at this point. And I included in your packets this evening a copy of the correspondence back and forth between myself and Mr. Housley. His firm is the consultant for the Mays, Ms. May and Mr. Serlin, I should say. At this point, I think since the plan has yet to be presented to the supervisors, I think it might make sense to yield some time to Mr. Housley to introduce the plan to the board and the public here, if you're all right with that.
So,
What should be done? Go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Housley had requested to speak on this agenda item. So when you're ready to go.
All right, sure. Be glad to do that. All right, so unfortunately, I can't look both ways, so I have to address the commissioners. But if someone has a question, please feel free. By the way, is Mr. Price here this evening?
No, he's not here.
All right.
I know.
Okay. Well, I talked to him today. He said he was going to try to make the meeting. So, you know what? I do have.
For the board's reference, what you're looking at now is the most recent drawing that was provided to our office. That was on Friday of last week, right before the holidays. So
those full-size ones, you'd like to.
I watched the old video from 21. He stood at that podium and said they know they have to have another conditional use hearing for the subdivision.
You don't say, by the way?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They acted like it should have all been done at the same time.
Yep.
I still don't understand why
And
they
then
give
this is
conditional use of anything that they didn't own.
I know, but he said they know they have to have another subdivision, sorry, subdivision.
Fitting into the cul-de-sac.
He was like,
that
oh.
we're proposing. So this is just a little exhibit that he and I have exchanged,
Yeah.
which is going to address one of your comments tonight, TJ.
So
You're
I don't
welcome.
believe a word out of his mouth after that.
Okay, so again, if you have any questions as I try to go through this,
Do we have an easel or anything?
I can hold it. This is light, really light, it's fiberboard. Okay, so what we have is this is the old Shire plan of lots. And phase 2 came up Hobbit Lane to this point, and Argonne Place came up and was constructed with a full cul-de-sac and lots around it. This portion of the development, phase 3 of the Shire plan, never really got developed. It got started, there was some grading work, there was some storm sewer installations, and it just stopped. Now, I can't tell you on a lot by lot basis, but generally overall, the people that were purchasing lots in here eventually quit paying their taxes. The property ended up going back into the land bank system. May and Christine and Joe purchased some of the lots, and then with the aid of the township, went in and purchased up all the rest of the lots. So it's their desire to consolidate all of these lots and the old right-of-ways into a single parcel for the construction of their own single-family home. There's one owner in phase 3, Mr. Price, that's why I was asking if he was here, that still would retain ownership of this. Because of the length of time under, and I'm going to use the word law, I'm not practicing law, but okay, under Pennsylvania law, if a development is proposed and the clauses indicate that there's going to be public dedication of the right-of-ways, after 21 years, those rights go away. The township cannot go in and enter and try to improve those right-of-ways, nor can the owners of the lots within the plan sue the township. So if I had bought a lot in the back, perhaps enter for litigation. That period of time is now gone. So what happens in that situation is the owners of the adjacent lots under Pennsylvania common law own to the center line of the right-of-way. And that protects that landowner back there, that if the public were to give up Gandalf Court and Hobbit Lane, that they would still have the right of access to get to their property. So that is what's going on here. Is Christine and Joe's attorney had filed and cleared title on this. There's still a question as to the legality of that and related to the right-of-ways, which talked to Brenda Sebring today. She can provide you with legal opinions and provide you with the documentation if you feel necessary. So what occurred is there was a question, especially with the Planning Commission and TJ, as to Mr. Price's rights, especially here at this entrance. And what's going on, and I believe you were still on the supervisors at the time, but these other four are brand new. So what we talked about was Hobbit Lane did not provide any turnaround whatsoever. The right-of-way simply was 50 foot wide, probably 25 foot, 26 foot cartway, came to an abrupt end at that point, and your public works plows up and they form a snow plow barrier across the end of the road. Well, with their needing to get a driveway back in here, that's problematic. So we also felt that if other citizens came up this road and there was a driveway going back into here, they may go on down the driveway and show up at their front door on private property. So we offered at the time, not thinking of Mr. Price, that we would put an offer to give the township a right-of-way. You could construct a turnaround at that location back in here. So TJ and the Planning Commission discussed the concerns over Mr. Price's rights to that property. So we reached out to Mr. Price, and he has agreed in principle. He wants to see how the whole process goes, and he asked some questions, but as of today, he's still fine with what we're proposing. He does have a copy of this where his name has been added, and I typo with the draftsman.
No problem.
They
That's an
left
easy fix.
Christine's name in there instead of Mr. Price, but that'll be fixed.
That's an easy fix.
Right. So we're asking him to sign off, and thereby, if you can see here, there's a line in front of Mr. Price. That's the old right-of-way line. This line out here is the old center line of the road. So from his right-of-way to the center line of the road, we're asking him to dedicate that back for public. And then Christine and Joe are going to give up this larger area over here so that a proper cul-de-sac or a turnaround can be constructed there. Your road trucks can come up and turn around, plow, do whatever maintenance, and not trespass on anybody's property. So that's the intent here. One of Joe's questions, and Joe, that's the reason why I gave you that red exhibit just now. The 50 foot, to clarify, the way I designed the cul-de-sac was in the past, in the old days, because I'm an old man, when you went through that cul-de-sac, you just have a little 25 foot radius in there. I worked with Gateway Engineers probably 2 to 3 decades ago, and I came up with a 50 foot return radius. So as you come out of the 40 foot turnaround, that red curb line is 50 foot. That's what I was referring to. Not.
I see, okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of, your first comment would be a misunderstanding, so I think that one's taken care of. So, the second comment that TJ had was related to Mr. Price and his ownership. Your solicitor is asking for clarification on these easement issues that exist after the subdivision, this consolidation were to take place, and what rights they have to do what they're doing, which we will provide to your solicitor.
But when you create a plan of lots, and I do this day in and day out, once the plan of lots is created, you're correct about the 21 years, there's two interests in a street. There's the public interest, which in this situation diminished because nothing was done for 21 years. However, there is a private interest in all this paper streets by Mr. Price. And that's the situation you guys, because you were here the last time, I asked you if those streets, did you file quiet title action? So after the last meeting, I checked the records, the only thing you filed a quiet title, your attorney was some type of loans or something like that, which I sent to TJ, which I think he sent to you. So you have an issue with Mr. Price as to the streets.
Right, so that's why we're now enjoining him into the subdivision. Brenda Sebring, the attorney representing them, wants to change this wording just a little bit in the
The
clause.
wording is very vague. In fact,
Right.
even if you change the name Christine May, I don't, it's good, we're down the road, because I'm also certified, by two different companies for title examinations. If I were you folks, and that's not clarified somehow, if you could cause you a problem in terms of loans, or, trying to sell your property, am I right?
Yes.
So that has to be clarified.
Yep. So the solicitor and I are on the same page. We both speak the same language. I fully understand what the questions are. We're gonna resolve that issue. Brenda wants to put some verbiage into what Mr. Price and Joe and Christine sign off on that specifically states that. So that'll clarify the document by them signing off notarization and then publicly recording it. That'll clarify all of those issues.
The language on top, because I talked to TJ, the language on top, I'm not being smart, just, it's kind of ambiguous or vague.
Yes, well, it's kind of standard language
I
that
know,
we
but
use.
this is different.
In this one, we're gonna fix it.
You have to be more definitive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I agree, we should strengthen those clauses to make
Yes.
sure they're.
And that protects your clients down the road.
Sure.
so she was working on it, trying to get it to me today. I said, listen, it's not necessary. I said, I can't change the plan and have them review it and have you guys comfortable, so I'm gonna ask for that to be a condition that TJ and the solicitor and I and Brenda all come to an agreement of the wording to get past that one. The third question, TJ, was, I'm trying to think what the third, I think I have it here. for me.
There was a small typo in note
Oh,
4.
Yeah,
That's mine.
my draftsman hit the space at the wrong point,
That's
so
mine.
just a really minor CAD thing. And then the last one is sewer modules. I have talked to Brendan at the DEP a couple of times. The one question that he's asking whether, because we may not need to file a module for this and get an exemption, and it's based on what was done before. So Brendan said, I needed to ask the township for the records on what was filed before. Was the original Shire plan, did they submit, because in the old days, we submitted modules, we did it for the whole plan. Today, you'd get very specific to a phase. So he's asking me to get the records from you guys, so we can address this. But, that being said, that's an issue that we can work out. So I'm asking that to also be a condition of approval. So those two things, so it's the working out of the legal, the clauses and the dedication for the public right-of-way, which would then be deeded over to you, in some document after subdivision. Because I'm not sure you're all aware of this, it's probably something you should know, is a subdivision doesn't really accomplish anything. Everybody thinks that this document does something, it really doesn't. So when this occurs, they even have to file a deed consolidating that to themselves. Because just because I filed this plan doesn't automatically do that. So, so we're asking for that to occur after the fact. So I need two conditions, well, maybe three, because of the typo. But the first one we can waive, I think, and then the other three, we're gonna ask for as a condition of approval, if that's okay.
Don,
And if you have any questions.
can I just ask a quick
Sure,
question about the
absolutely.
cul-de-sac? You're showing 53 feet as the general radius. Is there a reason for 53 as opposed to 50?
Yeah, because being a land surveyor and working with so many engineering firms, Gateway, Leonard Smith, and all of them through the years, I have tried to maintain the distance between the rear of the curb line and the right-of-way line as I traverse through a cul-de-sac. The old 50-foot radius it fit with a 36-foot cul-de-sac, and through the years, we've gone 36, 38, now 40. That cut down to about 8 foot, that space between the curb line and the right-of-way line. I had issue with that as a surveyor and trying to get all the other utilities into place, so I started bumping that back also. So mathematically, we've come up with a perfect design. If you're coming in, we use this right-hand offset cul-de-sac. You come in on the right-of-way line. When I hit the return radius, go around 53 foot, put the 50 foot coming back out. The curb line follows it almost exactly 12.5 feet throughout the entire cul-de-sac. So that's the reason for that odd distance. I've been using that for probably almost 2 decades now. And I've actually put it into my standards in all the communities that I represent, like you do, for Plumboro, Murraysville, North Huntington, formerly South Fayette, and several others. So we have that in our standard design now, as a 53 foot. It just fits better than the 8 foot that should be 12.
So you're just being generous.
Yeah, with the developers' money. Yeah,
Okay, thank you for that.
you're welcome.
So your storage module question,
Yes.
so this is your easement here, down here, right? Down
Let me
at the
take a
bottom
look
of
at
the-
this one.
And that's down here.
Yes.
So these people here are like family,
Okay,
and they were part of this,
Yes.
about their family's property.
okay.
She gave me a lot of documentation, because she was all for this, and then she needed to make sure that her dad recorded an easement over on Aunt Kay's property for her to, because she'd be landlocked.
Okay.
So then we cleared all that up, we found that, yes, he did before he died, they recorded it. She was just concerned that, hey, legally, this might be my only way in. She's like, but in the end, she had to put it there. She believes there is already easement agreement.
There is. There's actually 2 of them down here, and I have them in my project folder over here. There's 2 separate deeds that has conveyed it the right to put the sewers into here. There's also, I believe, a public storm sewer coming out of phase 2 that runs down through this 30-foot easement and dumps into this creek area. So that easement, the Mays will dedicate to the municipality. It'll also be the right.
Is that weird culvert thing?
Yeah, no, not the one coming up Van Gogh. There's also a strange one comes up here with
Yeah.
like inlets that you had commented on, TJ. But there's another storm sewer that comes up through this area to drive off, drains off the land. So, yeah, we'll be dedicating that over. And, if someone wanted to do a public line extension, they could do that. This, Mr. Price would have the right to use this little dog leg easement here and the full length of that 30 foot all the way down, plus those 2.
Because your only other choice would be a grinder pump.
Yeah. Yep. So maybe Mr. Price.
She wants to build a house down here,
Okay.
so she's already been checking on the easement agreement over to the Dolphy property.
Okay. All right. I don't know if she would have legal rights to that. So
Yeah.
I do have copies. I'd be more than glad to share
Well,
them.
even looking through her stuff.
She has other
maybe you were
access.
looking for your own, storage module stuff, that maybe she has some of it, cause she has some of the original old documents for this plan, because it was her dad and her aunt and her other aunt.
No.
So I'm thinking that maybe I might be able to find what you were talking about from her.
And it may be, your, can't remember the gentleman's name, your sewer authority.
Rich Kovac.
Yes, Rich Kovac.
Peters Creek.
Yeah, Peters Creek. I used to sit on the Clarendon Municipal Authority Treatment Plant Board, and I got to know Rich pretty well, so I can call him too. He may have copies of these modules if the township doesn't.
No, I'll try looking for them for you.
Okay, I apologize, but obviously, we have no way of getting them, and I asked DEP, and kind of got a chuckle. He says, you know how many modules we do per year? He said, there's no way we're gonna find it.
There's 29 boxes back there just for the company that I have to list through all the time, so
Oh,
I'm
nice.
looking for the Shire.
So the issue we have, TJ, is the language being modified on the drawing, or whatever you call the plan, that Mr. Price execute the appropriate documentation regarding the situation,
Yeah.
that they pay any all outstanding fees or expenses to the township, and that the applicant comply with any all sewage, modules, etc.
Yeah,
That's correct.
receive DEP approval, yeah.
I have a question, the cul-de-sac, who's gonna put this cul-de-sac in, the people that develop that?
No, we're not developing. We're not developing.
Well, whose property is this one right now? We ended right here where the street ended there, now this other part going in there, whose property is that on?
That would be on Mr. Price and on their property, which we're offering to the township, the right of way, that property. That's what had been agreed to with the original subdivision, it was done in 21.
You know, can't find a future board, I agree that.
I think at that meeting we discussed hammerhead.
I'm sorry?
I think at that meeting in 21, y'all were, I was still an audience member, but there was some talk about hammerhead at that meeting. I don't know about the cul-de-sac.
Well, I have, I think I even brought it with me, I still have the old subdivision, it was a cul-de-sac. That's what we were all from the township, and you're, yes, I do understand. I'm just pointing out what
I'm just,
happened.
I'm just saying.
Excuse me, the previous board though had suggested a hammerhead, Michelle's right.
I remember.
The previous solicitor, someone from Sweat Law, that Michael Crooney was the one that said, if the worst case, we do a hammerhead.
Okay,
And that was brought up previously. I have a question too regarding this whole cul-de-sac. If indeed it is put in, at what point do you intend to do that? Because that's our only access in and out of the property. Once we build, we won't be able to get to our home while that's being put in.
That's true, yeah.
So, yeah, where does that leave us? We need to know when that would happen. And we can't wait to build until you put that in. We're already so deep in financially because of the delays. It costs us so much more money, so much to the point we can't afford to build.
Well, I think the question about the cul-de-sac is one that I've been looking into, and the truth of the matter is this: the liquid fuels currently, in terms of our inventory, we're only receiving liquid fuel allocation for Hobbit Lane up to the point where it branches to Aragon Place. There is no reimbursement for any of the mileage beyond that intersection going up to the dead end. We're not currently being receiving that allocation. Topographically speaking, a cul-de-sac is going to be challenging. It's relatively steep. Space is limited. The Mays only have one point of access to their plant. There's issues relating to installing a cul-de-sac. So ultimately, I think it's unclear whose responsibility it is to install that cul-de-sac.
Whose responsibility?
Under a typical planned residential development, there would have been a temporary cul-de-sac built there when phase 2 was being constructed, because that's where
And we all know
the
why
end
it
of the
wasn't.
lots happened.
Right.
Why wasn't
The
it?
temporary cul-de-sac would have then been taken down when they went to develop phase 3, where they were intending to put a cul-de-sac and then a connection point to the other parcel. You know, obviously those things didn't play out that way. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had with the board now, as it relates to what's gonna happen with the terminus of that public street.
I think a cul-de-sac, because I went up and looked at it myself. And basically, I think a cul-de-sac would be that one. I'm not an engineer, but it would be helpful.
A cul-de-sac is gonna be expensive. There's concerns with stone subbase, paving, stormwater, everything related to a cul-de-sac would have to be figured out.
Have you submitted plans for a house or anything yet, or not?
No, because we don't have one deed. We can't build a house across multiple lots and the house extend, the lots are real skinny lots.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's the reason you're the last time I told you about you needed to acquire title, get something for the paper streets, because
And we were under the assumption all that was done,
it
Dennis.
wasn't done.
How do we know that? For $31,000 that we spent with Brenda, we certainly thought that everything was covered. And to spend another 31, we can't afford it, we gotta walk away then
Well,
at this point.
but I have to bring, I as an attorney have to bring that to your attention.
we understand that. The issue is that if the township through physically or does not want this, we just eliminate it. It becomes part of the process. We'll have Mr. Price sign off, we'll sign off to him, he can sign off to us, and we're done. We'll just take the cul-de-sac out, and we'll have a dead-end street at that point. That's the alternative. I know they're not gonna build a cul-de-sac, we're not doing a land development, we're not creating,
Can't afford it.
you know, well, yeah, we're not doing a land development, they're just trying to quiet title on 14 lots.
I lived in a house on the street that just ended. And it drove me insane as being the last driveway for every vehicle to turn around. Every salt truck, every garbage truck, every delivery. There were 30 houses on my street, and they came down and hit dead end and turned around on
With the gated driveway though, you can't, you'll have to turn around just like you do now.
How is that gonna work for emergency vehicles? Are they gonna,
How does it work now? How does it work now? For 40 years, they've had emergency vehicles come up there, and it hasn't been an issue. The original plan was put in 83,
That's what I was.
so it is 40.
I guess it's,
Phase 1 was 83.
And I think that's maybe why you guys were all talking about a hammerhead back then, because it solved both issues of the.
We never-
The turnaround for emergency vehicle.
Right, instead of
versus the
hammerhead.
cost of doing.
So you're putting a gated driveway in?
We will if it just ends, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have everybody down. With the gated driveway, it's just like it is right now. Or if we sell the land and never develop it, then it stays just like it is now.
this is certainly a unique situation, but one concern I have is if we proceed with no cul-de-sac, with no turnaround, that we would be establishing a precedent there. You know, if somebody wanted to build at the end of a dead-end street,
But everything's on case by case basis.
certainly this is a unique situation, yes.
It is unique. So like I said, I
It's a,
think if you put a cul-de-sac up, you would put would be a lot of person. Really, but I love it. I just think it's a lot of issues.
There is an issue.
I think I would, again, Steve, you know what I'm talking about. I can add
Who would put the hammerhead in?
Not us. We're out of money.
There's no benefit for the township.
Yeah, we're out of money.
We would not get liquid fuels with the
Why should the
hammerhead.
township? See, I understand your issue, but I always take positions, why should the taxpayer of these folks?
yeah, what's the public interest in a hammerhead turnaround? It's,
More of a concession.
My question is, why didn't the developer have to put that in? We all know why. There was shady business going on back then. Those lots never should have been subdivided and sold without a street, without utilities, and that cul-de-sac should have been in, just like TJ just said, when phase 2 was done. That should have been put in, it wasn't.
I wasn't here.
And neither was I, Dennis, so why should we be left holding the bag for this?
So why, let me ask you a question, you're asking, but I looked at the land, why do you wanna build that area? I'm still trying to figure that out.
Why do you wanna build in that area?
I mean, is this downhill, is it kinda?
We've
You got-
spent thousands of dollars on this, we're building a ranch. We couldn't afford land in Peters Township, we could afford that land, we thought, until we got in this state. That's why, it was affordable and it was private, and that's why. And we give tax money back to Union Township,
No, I'm just saying,
we walk away.
I can think of better land, I can think of better place to build a house.
Right, for more money.
Don, I
Yeah,
think
for a
it,
lot more money, we don't have more money, we're out of money. And we
I'm saying-
need, and we need one level living because of my health, and if we're stuck, we couldn't find land.
So once again, what is eliminate the cul-de-sac?
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Lloyd.
So
Talk to
we're,
me.
and I don't know the area, I don't know how much more we would get in liquid fuels. Can the math be done to determine what we would be getting in liquid fuels? And would putting the cul-de-sac in pay for itself in a short time?
probably not a short time.
No, okay.
Not a lifetime.
Okay.
Not in, children might see that.
Any guess on what the cul-de-sac would cost?
He said over 100,000.
Probably at least $100,000.
600?
100.
$100,000. It seems to me that's what the board has to consider, $100,000 that you either
That's-
have or
that's
don't
it.
have.
That's a very
We
rough
won't-
estimate.
We won't recoup
I-
on the liquid
yeah.
fuels over a period of time. You know, I mean, we'll get liquid fuels to a certain point on that road, you know, but how much liquid fuels are we getting? And how many years would it take to make $100,000?
Steve, do you know what our annual allocation for liquid fuels is?
$175,000.
Two-
275, I'm sorry,
275.
275.
And that's spread over what, 35 miles of roadway?
35 miles away.
So, we could figure it out. How long it would take, how much, it's gonna take a long time.
All right, so let's get back
It won't be our lifetime.
let's get back.
I also think it's worth stating that Union Township is not accepting any responsibility for stormwater management infrastructure within this plan. That's-
Except for what comes out of Halted Land, which you already own and maintain, as far as I'm TJ, because it comes out phase 2 and goes down here now. That already exists, nothing.
This easement already exists.
The easement is like
Now that
10
we
years.
spent thousands of dollars, everyone's pulling the plug.
Now, that part, of course, is, so we maintain that 30-foot easement, that's what I was talking about.
But
before.
TJ, what about PAWC's water dumping? We're not responsible for that.
Yeah, that's.
And that hasn't even been addressed.
No, we talked.
That's a
I talked to
separate
PA
issue,
I
though,
talked
as
to
far as I'm
PAWC.
concerned. That's-
They don't drain that every month or every year.
But they do drain it
Well,
sometimes,
let
it
me
will be
explain,
flooded.
I talked to them before the meeting. Mr. Patterson told me they drain it only to request a DEP, and what they do is they push most of the water out of that tank. And then before they drain anything. So most of that water they push back out into the system because it's a loss of money. So it's not like they sit there and drain the whole tank.
No, there's a lot of water, there's damage, the man above us has it
I'm
completely,
just telling-
what's his name?
But you can't.
TJ was up there, he saw the video. You have no idea, Dennis, we will be flooded if these.
As far as I'm concerned, that's a separate issue
Okay, we
that
have to
should be
deal with that,
resolved
too.
with the water company. Regardless of the amount of water, none of that infrastructure is sized to handle tank draining from Pennsylvania American. So I don't believe they should be dumping water into our storm sewer system.
All right, let's go back
And I
to-
think that should be resolved separately. That, as
Let's
far
go
as I'm
back to
concerned.
Senate one, so we're back here with this May plan subdivision. You guys have any more questions? Steve?
No, I was concerned, who would pay for that cul-de-sac? I don't think the taxpayer should develop property for somebody else. If they do, once you start a precedent, you're gonna do it for everybody. Any developer comes in here, you're gonna do the same for them. Once you start it,
Well, the question, do you want a cul-de-sac or do you want a hammerhead? What would it cost a hammerhead? 10, 15,000
Yeah, yeah, 20, 25 maybe?
at the high,
That'd be my guess.
at the high.
Yeah, in that order of magnitude, yeah.
All right.
No more than 50,000, I would think.
Mr. Parrish, any other questions, concerns?
no, I wanted, like I said, who's gonna pay for it? That's all. If we're gonna go on private property to do that, we're gonna start a
They'd
precedent.
have to give you an easement to put it on. You don't just build something.
It could be a single load too, TJ, right, at the end of Hobbit Lane, because the topography is more favorable to the right, we could put that just to the right so they could pull in back up and then go. It could be, it wouldn't have to be a true T, you know what
Sure.
I'm saying? So we could save cost doing it that way, we could put it just to the right.
You
That
see
would be-
this right at the hammer?
Yeah, like just the right side of the hammer, you wouldn't need the left side because of the topography, so you could come in, plow truck, for instance, could pull in to the right, back up with enough space to then go back down the street. And simplify the T per se, you know, so you don't build the right.
What would that cost you? What would you guess? It's like when you negotiate labor, I'm just guessing. What would it cost?
I would guess 20 or 30,000 maybe.
In that circumstance he's talking about?
Yeah.
Does that seem right, Mr. Housley?
Could be, it's, yeah, it's so hard.
Perspective.
Yeah.
We're just spitballing. Ms. Moore? Any questions, sir?
What is the legalities of putting it in the versus?
You can put, you can do it, you just have to get liquid fuel.
And is it possible that maybe down the road, when the township is more financially stable, that the cul-de-sac, that could be a consideration down the road to obtain the liquid fuels?
Whether we were sitting on a lot of money or not, it would take 100 years to recoup the cost of putting in cul-de-sac, that's what they're around.
If, I did a real quick math, a little over $7,000 a mile we get.
About 3,000 for what.
And I'm guessing we've got a mile, I mean, is it a mile worth of road? It's not even a mile worth of
It's
road.
3,000 a year in liquid fuels on that road.
No, it's probably, it's,
It doesn't make any financial sense.
I mean, if there was a mile, you're looking at probably 15 years. This is less than a mile, you're looking a lot longer than that.
Probably not even a quarter.
So you're looking 30,
Michelle, any questions? Concerns?
Excuse me, TJ, at what point will this be done? Like, cause we will
They
not
don't
have
know.
access to our home.
They don't know, that's
So
what they're
how
saying.
That's a conversation right now.
So when you
Yeah,
vote
I
on that,
know
though,
the
and we
answer.
don't have access in, what do we do?
Well, you can always put, you can always put construction and some rock, you know.
But no, where that is, if they're constructing that hammerhead, and we're
But-
living
but-
there,
but-
we will not be able to get
It
through.
won't take that long to build it. It won't
Okay,
take long.
I don't know how long it
Days.
takes.
You're, and, yeah, a contractor's gonna
Even
have
with the-
provisions there to
Even with the
allow you,
topography.
allow private property owners to access their property, that's standard, yeah.
All right.
As long as we can access.
Roughly it'll take by the time it's Veterans
Larry, any questions, sir?
I just think that we ought to discount the liquid fuels issue because there's not enough distance at the end of Hobbit Lane after the cul-de-sac to satisfy liquid fuel returns to make a difference. You ought to look at the hammerhead as a practical matter. It's gonna be less expensive. You construct it much more quickly. And still give them potential access to their property. Liquid fuels is a non-issue.
Okay.
I don't know when you were on the property, but I went on with Sheree Bellucci Doves. I was down from below. I don't think it's feasible to put a car, it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be real difficult to even fit a car.
I don't know how we would get our car up
That's what I'm
onto
saying.
it. Our car would be teetering on the edge
I'm
of
not an
it.
engineer, but I'm looking at it going, how would you put a cul-de-sac? It's gonna be expensive because it's gonna have to.
I think this is as far as taking the same position, cul-de-sac would be.
Sir?
If you're taking the same position, cul-de-sac, question, would cul-de-sac be cost efficient?
Right, it's too much.
Right, that's, to me, it's
Do you
a
think we
non-issue
should
if we
squeeze-
consider the liquid fuels.
We never asked for any of this. It was a recommendation of the previous board, Michelle, as you know. We never, it's not us requesting this. We never asked for this. We just wanted a place to build a house.
I said, it's hard, like up here at the table, we've never walked your property, so I asked my friend, I'm like, hey, can you take me up there, cause like, I wanna know what they're.
I'm glad you did, because it's
Stormwater,
very difficult land, but like I said, that's what we could afford, and we like the privacy of it, we thought we can put a house here. With the approval of the previous board, that's why we went through all those hoops before. Can this be approved? Will this work? We never would have gone ahead with our purchase had we known that it would come to this. So imagine how we feel sitting here. It was approved, it was signed off on, that was never submitted because we had issues with liens and loans against the property, which is why no one else wanted it, you had to go through quiet title. We go through quiet title assuming that, okay, it's just a matter of filing, and then the board quit, and now we start all over again.
Yeah, so you like your engineer will tell you the same thing. As legal people, as lawyers, engineers, whatever we do, it's gotta be done the right way. And that's, and I can't, just everything, you don't seem,
No, I
you don't seem
understand.
to understand it, because we can't make, if we make a mistake, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna blame him and him, am I right or wrong?
I'm always
And me.
first.
So what do? We gotta make sure it's done the right way, I'm not trying to make it difficult.
Dennis, I completely understand that, but we were under the impression that the other people were acting in that same manner, and they weren't. We were misled, and we didn't know that. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, you're just doing this to give us trouble, I understand it has to be done right. Our assumption was it was done right in 2021, and why would we have any other reason to believe that it wasn't?
I understand, like I said, I'm just.
I don't think you do understand. We've invested
No,
3 years of this. We don't have a place to
I-
live. We've sold our home.
Okay.
Well, I think Christine, we're at where we need to be. If I understand you correctly, a hammerhead, a place for the plow trucks to go, get turned around, head back up.
Yeah, I mean,
So I can alter this.
see, 'cause I went up there, after the last planning, I decided, before another man decided to go up and take a look, because everyone kept saying cul-de-sac. And I thought cul-de-sac was just too difficult.
Okay. Well, that was, again, Christine's right, that was the recommendation prior. I get that, so we're beyond that, we can change it to a hammerhead. I'll provide something, that you can look at and then.
All right, that's good.
If that, cause it seems that's the board's opinion that that's what they're.
I think that would be, it would just too difficult.
Cause nobody wants a dead end street with nowhere for a plow truck to go. I mean, he's gotta pull up, back drag, he can't turn around, I mean, it's gonna be.
Okay, it's getting kinda late. Mr. Wilson, any questions?
The only thing I could, township was always put together so that you could accumulate the money. They're asking.
Hey, guys in the back, be quiet, okay? Go ahead.
They're asking for a hammerhead. That is not unreasonable with a plan that was screwed up from the very beginning. 40 years
Exactly.
ago.
Exactly.
I have no problems. I don't really like hammerheads, but I think it's the alternative that's most accessible here. And I don't think it's an unreasonable cost for the township to pick up.
All right, good.
So that's Union Township's expense.
I said that, it's up to them, they make that decision. Their decision, not yours,
I
not
think
mine.
that should be, I think that should be
The next, that's the next
decided.
stop.
So, who do you want to pick up the cost of building a hammerhead? Mr. Parrish?
For me,
Cost to build a hammerhead, who do you want to be to pick up the cost? You want the
I'd say
township?
the developers should do the cost. I don't think the taxpayer should pick it up. That's the way I feel.
Okay, Linda? Who should pick up the cost of the hammerhead? It's not my decision, it's not TJ's or Harold's, it's your decision.
What is typically done in these situations?
That's what typically does.
This is an atypical situation. Normally, the developer pays for all this, that's where Steve's correct.
Did the developer have a bond? Did the developer pay any bond for not finishing?
I don't believe he did.
That's what I'm asking, like, ahead of time, maybe the township's, if we came in on this guy's bond, then maybe we've already been paid. I don't know, did he have a bond? He might have a bond.
The only thing I can tell you is, when we went through with the first subdivision, I asked if there were developers agreement, because we were still less than 21 years. So I asked if there was developers agreement, I was told there were none. I asked if there was any bonds in place, we were told there were none. So, as far as I know, there's no documentation, no bonds. The engineer, your township engineer at the time, her father filed the subdivision. She approved it, signed off on it.
Kim Gales?
Yeah.
What was the guy's name?
John Robert Gales. Yeah, and they're still practicing together in the same office.
Yeah.
So, you know, that,
It wasn't right.
Okay, Linda, any questions? Or you already said. Awesome. Atypical, normally the developer, the person wants that, they pay the cost. Okay, so who do you want, township, you want? May.
It's not for our use.
Because we're not the developer, we're just purchasing land that was supposedly developed and lot sold by somebody else.
We're not using it. It's for the
Unfortunately,
township.
the argument Miranda, similar argument Miranda is doing right across the by the empty lots. It's a similar argument.
Okay, Linda,
Well, it's a really tough decision, but the problem is that if the taxpayers pays for this hammerhead, then we've gotta pay for all the other hammerheads moving forward, from a legal standpoint,
that's what
right?
people argue.
It's not for our use though, we don't need it.
But I don't get that.
So can we say we just don't wanna put it in?
That's what I'm saying, when you do stuff, you do it the right way, so this was done the right
So
way.
no one really would use that
No.
argument.
Well, then, but will they still consolidate the lots is the question.
Why don't you just take a vote?
Could it be a shared?
Supervisors should vote.
Well, I have a lengthy motion to put up here, I just wanna know, okay,
Is it possible that it could be a shared cost?
you could do anything you want, it's also possible.
well, let me,
So you're saying
I would
we-
like to say you could request what you want, but we're not paving a cul-de-sac. They've made that clear, we're not paving a
So
turnaround.
are you
We're
saying there is
offering-
no developers agreement for this Shire plan?
That's what you told me.
I don't believe so.
That's not you, the township, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I don't
sorry.
But that's
believe
what
so.
you're saying, that you've been told.
The township is
It
told,
seems hard to believe there was no developers
Yeah, it is hard, the whole thing is hard to believe.
Okay, let's keep moving on. Just keep quiet over there. Michelle, what are you gonna do? Because it's already 8 o'clock. We're not even close to the agenda. Michelle, what are you gonna do?
Outside of, do we need easement agreements from them and from Grace or whoever?
There's a lot of hoops to go through.
That's what I'm saying, are they gonna pay for the easement agreements and stuff with their own property? And-
Oh, they're gonna have to pay for the easements and all that.
That's what I'm saying, like, is that, when she was saying shared cost, I'm not saying for the actual paving, I'm saying to get their own easement agreement, and just replace the easement agreement.
That should be their cost, the easement, whatever he does with Mr. Price should be their responsibility, it shouldn't be our responsibility.
We're out of money, Dawn.
You
You
have,
know.
but you have to prepare the document for dedication to the township.
But what if we just say we're not doing the hammerhead?
Well, that's your choice. You
And we
don't-
can't
you
pay
don't
for it. We're
have
out of
to-
money.
You don't
We're
have
not
to
saying, I
offer
wasn't
anything.
suggesting.
Yeah, we're out of money.
What I was talking about wasn't the hammerhead construction, it was the easement.
Right, but if there's no easement for the hammerhead, then there's no fee, no more fees. We're out of money.
We're trying to work with you on this whole situation.
I understand that, but I understand that.
Let's keep moving on. Michelle, any other questions? It's already 8 o'clock. Table it.
Do they?
It's been tabled for 2 years.
My thing is I find it hard to believe there's not a developer's agreement. If there is a developer's agreement, maybe this town already got some sort of surety for the unfinishment, and we're charging them a
That's
second
before
thing.
my time.
That's what I'm saying, it's before my time, but I think it's 93 or something.
What's not
So-
that portion of it?
So did we get a bond from this developer? Did we already take the surety? Did we, you know, what happened? Maybe we've already done it for this hammerhead, I don't know. But they're making one house, it's not like, it's different than Tuscany where Miranda wants to come in and finish the whole development. They're using a similar argument, they just want to come in and buy the empty lots, but they're a whole development, not one piece of, not one house. I think it benefits everybody from the entire Shire to finish this up, button it up, for sure, everybody in there probably wants that, and become something, rather than become.
Okay, so, all right, that goes Larry. Larry, what are you gonna do?
Last year, our plan was first proposed. It's on your table. The intent was develop those lots. These folks are trying now to consolidate. There would be no need for cul-de-sac. All the claim would have been extended. They went through these two or maybe 3 ownerships up there.
Cul-de-sac, it just would have been further in.
Yes.
That's the original plan, we still had a cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Property lane would have been developed down through property they're trying to purchase and get straightened out. There would be no need for a cul-de-sac at all unless there was no
That's their house, where's that?
exit. Okay, within the plan itself,
Yeah, that's the
you would-
cul-de-sac, the original.
yeah,
plan.
you would have a cul-de-sac. Where it's causing an issue now. Probably truncated. Pros and cons to both sides. Like Steve said, if the township undertakes the cost, you're setting a precedent.
That's a rough guess, and I'd like to do an actual
It's less than the cost of the camera.
quantity-based takeoff.
Or the township
But it's less than the cost of the camera.
builds the hammerhead, specifically addressing this issue and exempting from any other future developments where the township would have to be approached for undertaking the cost. That be placed in an agreement. Where the township would only focus the site on this particular issue and no others, where there may be an attempt made by a developer back to the township and say, hey, you did it for A, now we want it for B.
Well, what we could do, we could craft a motion saying it's a continuing again, if you do develop the right way, that's strategic, if you have a cul-de-sac, construction cul-de-sac, and they build that, and then they, down the road, they extend further back, that's typical. This is whatever was done here, wasn't done the way I would have done it. This is done.
We could express as a municipality, this is, she said, Dennis, atypical, therefore an exemption.
Chuck, we got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not in the stream of consciousness. Here's the thing, we're doing a road improvement. It's going to be at the end of a dead-end road. Now, that's the township's responsibility. Road improvements are the township's responsibility. Even though it's being done to, and it's a benefit for the customer, it is our job to do the road improvements. We should be responsible for paying them.
Okay.
That should be the end of the discussion.
All right, good. All right, so let me throw this out there. This is what you may want to consider. A motion to approve the May plan of lots subdivision consolidation, subject to the following specific conditions, offset. 1, that the applicant pay any and all costs, expenses that are currently outstanding. 2, that the applicant take the amend the language in the plan to the reasonable satisfaction to the township engineer. 3, that Darrell Price, owner of lot 44, parcel number 64001, I already have, you don't have to write this down. 010300018-00, execute the necessary language on the made plan lots prior to the township executing the same. That the applicant comply with any and all sewage requirements / modules. That may and Price provide the township with the appropriate easements for the hammerhead / cul-de-sac, but we're not doing that, it's a hammerhead period. That the township assume no responsibility for any future issues with title to said lots. And if you wanna put the cost to be borne by the township, the hammerhead, but keep in mind, the cost, the drafting of the easement and the cost of that's borne by the maze, not the township, that's how we do elsewhere.
So who does that? You do it.
Okay, am I correct? That's how we do it. I worked about 40 places, that's how we do it. All right,
So we got six things, applicant pays any outstanding money to the township.
What is
One
that,
is-
Michelle? What is
Well,
the
that's if,
outstanding?
only if you do, we're not saying you do.
Wait,
Yeah.
that's a catch-all, saying basically that if you owe the township anything so
We know.
far, listen to me. It's anything, if you owe, I do this every place I go, that the applicant pay any outstanding expenses, you understand what I'm saying?
And that's only if you would have an agreement to pay, you know, if you have a.
If the engineer and the solicitor, they charge the township, those are actually your costs.
We've been billed over, and like, we paid the solicitor twice
Right.
when we purchased those lots. We've been.
Only because we weren't here before, we don't know
Exactly,
if you
but
had a
again,
zoning
it
hearing
costs
that
us
you didn't.
thousands.
Okay, it's
for
done,
that,
it's
that's why
okay,
asked.
listen to me, it's done.
I realize you wanna go
understand?
home, but this is important to us,
Hey,
guys.
it's getting late. That's
Right, it's
cost-
getting late, but
please,
what's important?
please, it's important to the township also. That the cost of building the, hammerhead be at the township's expense. You understand what I'm saying, Mr. Housley?
Yeah.
So those 6 things, and then the township will bear the cost of the hammerhead.
Yeah,
Do you have any problems with what I, Mr. Housley, have any problem with what I said? You understand it? DJ, you understand what I'm saying?
Now, because this is a conditional approval, you put those in the letter to us for us to sign?
He's gonna put what I said in a letter, and I'll copy this, I'll dictate, I'll get it over to you, Mark.
Yeah.
You send it to Mr. Housley, and it'll be over, but again, it has to pass. You still have to.
I understand, yeah.
Does the board understand what we're talking about, Mr. Parrish? Does that have his board? Ms. Bree, Mr. Spar?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we should add one additional condition about stormwater, that the township's not gonna accept any additional stormwater above and beyond what they already own.
Does that have any relevance to the PAWC water? Cause I don't wanna sign away
PAWC water is
rights.
different.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, cause I don't wanna sign away rights, again, they cannot drain those tanks at all once we
The
build.
most we can do though is send them a notification that they can't be doing it.
But they're draining into township
I get
sewers.
it, we can send them a
And it's
notification
waters-
that they can't be doing it.
Okay,
Or
waters
we
with
can't have a
chemicals.
police officer every day to make sure they don't come one day to do it. All we can do is notify and say, you can't be doing it.
But it needs to be corrected, those storm sewers cannot handle
agree
that
with
amount
that.
of water, and the township needs to correct
Yeah, we
that.
agree, like, we need to tell them,
And that
don't be
needs-
doing that.
Okay, but if they do
Township
do it,
needs
we're
to put one
flooded.
there.
We'll put them on
Yeah.
notice, but.
All right, so there's 7 conditions, you understand the 7 conditions? Again, one more time, that the applicant pay any and all costs, expenses that are currently outstanding. 2, that the applicant amend the language in the plan to the legal satisfaction of the township engineer. 3, that Darrell Price, owner of lot 44, parcel number whatever, execute the necessary language on the main plan of lots prior to the township executing the same. Next one, the applicant comply with any and all sewage, modules / requirements. That May and Price provide the township with, the appropriate easements for the hammerhead. Township assumes no responsibility for any future issues with the title of said lots. Next paragraph, the cost to build the hammerhead will be at the cost of the township. Paragraph 7, the township will not assume any responsibility for stormwater excepting PAWC. You understand it, Mr. Housley?
No, that last comment's incorrect. It's, can you reword that again, TJ, how do you think?
No, we're just saying, maybe we see no accepting, we're not
New.
accepting PAWC.
Right.
I mean, that,
But there is an existing storm sewer in there that you do own, and then there's another one that you won't own, so we need to clarify.
I'm saying that the township, as part of this subdivision approval, is not going to accept any additional stormwater infrastructure above and beyond what they already own.
Yes. Yes.
any old stormwater that they,
Any and all stormwater infrastructure above and beyond what is already owned by the township. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
all right, is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Evans Doran, a second by Mr. Wilson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Approved unanimously.
Okay, keep moving.